What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. Jorge Masvidal has shared his thoughts on the current welterweight landscape, and he made a bold claim about who he believes could actually beat Islam Makhachev if Islam ever moved up. Masvidal said he thinks Shavkat Rakhmonov is the only welterweight right now with the size, skill set, and complete game to truly challenge Islam. He explained that both Carlos and Morales are great options for a title fight, and that he'd be happy with either one getting the shot, but he reminded everyone that there's another monster in the division who can't be ignored. Masvidal referred to Shavkat as the boogeyman at 170, praising him as an incredible fighter who brings everything to the table. He said Shavkat is naturally bigger than Islam, has high-level wrestling, an endless gas tank, and a surprisingly solid striking game. Masvidal pointed out that Shavkat does take some shots, but he gives back just as much, and technically he's far better on the feet than people give him credit for. He admitted he had almost forgotten about Shavkat because of the long injury layoff, but once he remembered, he immediately placed Shavkat at the top of the list of contenders who could beat almost anyone in the division. Masvidal said Shavkat is one of his favorite welterweights to watch, and he genuinely believes Shavkat has what it takes to beat Islam, calling him the one guy with the size and style to pull it off. Masvidal then floated a few potential matchups, saying fans might soon get Shavkat versus JDM, or maybe Shavkat versus either Carlos or Michael, depending on who doesn't end up fighting for the title. He emphasized that Shavkat deserves a big fight soon, and that the division needs to see him back in action. And before we continue, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to help support the channel. Moving on to another news, Sean O'Malley recently shared some interesting thoughts about Khamzat, calling him a bigger, stronger version of Islam Makhachev. During a relaxed moment on his podcast, O'Malley explained why this comparison makes sense to him. He said that both fighters have an incredibly dominant grappling style, but Khamzat's size and physicality give him an extra edge that could make a matchup between them fascinating to watch. O'Malley noted that when you look at Islam, you see a fighter who's extremely calculated, efficient, and smart about how he controls positions. He's a master at breaking opponents down slowly and taking away every option they have. But then when you look at Khamzat, you see someone who brings that same type of pressure, yet with the frame of a much bigger athlete. That combination, according to O'Malley, is exactly what makes the idea of a grappling match so exciting. He went on to say that Islam, even at 185, could probably beat most guys because of how well-rounded and technical he is. But the thought of him rolling with Khamzat adds another level of intrigue. O'Malley mentioned that Khamzat is just a bigger version of Islam, and that alone would make their styles crash in a way fans would love to witness. The pace, the scrambles, the strength battles, the technique, it would all come together in a matchup that would definitely grab attention. He added that seeing those two lock up on the mats would be sick, especially since their grappling approaches mirror each other in some ways while still bringing unique strengths. O'Malley said it would actually be a fun grappling fight, and it's something he'd genuinely love to see happen, even if only for the pure entertainment and high-level skill on display. Moving on to another news, Belal Muhammad is sounding more confident than ever as he prepares to step into the octagon against Ian Gary this weekend at UFC Qatar. Belal has made it clear that he isn't just looking for a win. He's planning on knocking out Gary in emphatic fashion. He joked that fans might be seeing Mr. Canelo hands show up on fight night, hinting that he's bringing a sharper striking game than people expect. For anyone who may have forgotten, Belal and Gary are set to co-headline the UFC Qatar card, a matchup that's been brewing with plenty of tension. Back in October, Belal revealed on X that Gary didn't want the bout to be 5 rounds, so the fight was ultimately booked for 3. Now that fight week has arrived, Belal has been doing more interviews, and he's been dropping details about what he calls his crazy game plan. In a recent conversation with Mike Bond from MMA Junkie, Belal explained exactly how he sees the first round playing out. He said he expects Gary to run around early, relying on his usual point-style jabs, but Belal believes that approach won't hold up. By the end of the first round, he plans to explode, grab hold of Gary, take him down, and then purposely let him get back up just to prove a point. Belal said he wants to show Gary that he can take him down anytime he wants. After that, he plans to outbox him, especially since Gary claimed he could outstrike Belal. Belal acknowledged that Gary has shared the cage with great strikers. He's faced MVP, Shavkat, and Prates, and none of them managed to put him away. But for Belal, the mission is clear. Finish Gary on the feet and remind everyone exactly who he is. He added that doing so would make a massive statement in the division. Belal closed things out with intensity, and if he executes this plan, it would undeniably earn him huge respect. As fight night approaches, all eyes are on whether he can deliver the performance he's promising. Moving on to another news, Paddy Pimblett has fired back at Justin Gaethje after Gaethje once again pushed for a title shot, insisting he deserves it more than anyone else in the division. Paddy didn't hold back, saying that nobody is owed anything in the UFC, and that Gaethje acting like the promotion owes him a championship opportunity is simply not how things work. He reminded everyone that he beat a higher-ranked opponent in far more convincing fashion in his last fight compared to Gaethje, who defeated Rafael Fiziev at UFC 313 by unanimous decision. Ever since then, Gaethje has been vocal about wanting the next title shot and even claimed he would retire if he didn't get it. Paddy acknowledged that he respects Gaethje and sees him as a legend, but he feels Gaethje's recent interviews have been out of character, almost as if he's becoming entitled. He said Gaethje has been talking like the UFC owes him something, insisting he deserves the shot based on his resume alone. Paddy pushed back on that idea, saying nobody gets handed opportunities. You fight for them and your performances matter. He emphasized that his own last win came against a higher-ranked opponent, and he finished the fight in a much cleaner, more dominant fashion. He also pointed out that his matchup with Seapor already has a built-in storyline, something that naturally generates excitement. He admitted he doesn't like Seapor personally and would have preferred he didn't become a two-division champ, but from a career point of view, it actually benefits him that Seapor won the belt. If Charles had retained the title, Paddy believes he would have been forced to take another fight before earning his shot. With Ilia holding the belt, everything aligns perfectly. The storyline is set, the rivalry is there, and the matchup makes complete sense. Paddy said he doesn't understand why the fight hasn't already been announced, or why the contract hasn't been finalized. In his view, all the pieces are in place and the division is ready to move forward. He wrapped up by saying that the next few weeks should make things clearer, and he's ready for whatever the UFC decides. Moving on to another news, Ian Gary has fired back at Belal Muhammad after hearing Belal's recent comments during his interview with Mike Bond from MMA Junkie. Gary didn't waste any time responding, making it clear that if Belal chooses to stand with him, there is absolutely no chance he survives beyond the 5-minute mark. Gary said Belal has always found success by mixing things up, blending his wrestling and boxing, and sticking to what he does best. But if Belal decides to keep the fight on the feet, Gary believes the outcome is inevitable. Gary stated there's not a chance in hell that Belal lasts past the opening round if the fight stays standing. He explained that, in his eyes, Belal is lying to himself with this talk about taking Gary down and letting him back up just to prove a point. To Gary, that's nothing more than reverse psychology. He believes Belal is trying to convince the world he can do whatever he wants in this matchup, when deep down he knows he'll be desperate to wrestle. According to Gary, Belal is already setting up excuses, talking about grabbing him, letting him up, and then outboxing him. Gary said the reality is simple. Belal knows he's going to have to grapple, and Gary knows he can defend those takedowns. He pointed out that Belal's wording reveals his actual mindset, showing cracks in the confidence he's trying to project. Gary wrapped up by saying that the entire thought pattern from Belal makes it obvious what's really happening. In his view, Belal understands the danger he's facing on the feet, and the pressure is already starting to show. Moving on to another news, things got a little tense at UFC Qatar after Arman and Ilia unexpectedly came face to face at the hotel where several fighters are staying, with both men being in the same building alongside a number of other UFC athletes. It was only a matter of time before a run-in happened, but this one came much closer than anyone expected. Earlier this morning, Arman stepped off an elevator just as Ilia was about to step on. The timing couldn't have been tighter. According to those who saw it, the two were only a few steps away from making direct eye contact. Staff members on site quickly recognized what was happening and immediately stepped in, subtly positioning themselves between the fighters to block their view of each other before anything could escalate. From the angle shown, it looked like both men were focused, locked in for fight week, and completely unaware of how close they were to bumping into each other. Footage of the moment began circulating online shortly after, showing Arman walking out with purpose, while Ilia stood near the entrance of the elevator, ready to board. Even though nothing verbal happened and no confrontation took place, fans are already buzzing about the tension. With both fighters carrying strong personalities and a history of competitive energy, even an accidental encounter like this adds fuel to the atmosphere surrounding UFC Qatar. Moving on to another news, footage has surfaced of Justin Gaethje appearing drunk and visibly irritated during a conversation with a fan out on a golf course. The clip quickly made waves online as Gaethje, holding what looked like a drink in his hand, spoke with a small group of people about MMA and the UFC. Everything seemed lighthearted at first, but things shifted when one fan mentioned that his favorite fighter of all time was Conor. The moment the fan said Conor's name, Gaethje snapped back with frustration, calling Conor a name and questioning why why the fan wouldn't choose an American fighter instead. The fan tried to keep things friendly and repeated that his pick was simply Conor, but Gaethje clearly wasn't having it and stepped in to express why the subject struck a nerve with him. Gaethje told the fan that Conor had refused to fight him despite past opportunities for the matchup to happen. He insisted that he would have knocked Conor out and that Conor chose not to step into the cage with him. The fan responded casually, saying he had seen those talks before, but Gaethje kept stating that he was tired of the whole narrative. He repeated that it wasn't him backing out of the fight. In his view, it was Conor who avoided it. As the conversation continued, Gaethje, still sounding agitated, admitted that Conor had accomplished incredible, almost unbeatable things earlier in his career. He gave Conor credit, saying his achievements were astronomical and that he did a lot for the sport. Gaethje acknowledged that those accomplishments had elevated all fighters, including himself, and that Conor deserved recognition for what he had done when he was at his peak. However, Gaethje added that Conor was at his absolute best back when he was broke, hungry, and fighting like everything was on the line. He implied that those days were gone, and that the version of Conor who became a global superstar simply wasn't the same fighter anymore. The clip ended with Gaethje still heated, while the fan tried to keep the exchange respectful. The footage sparked plenty of discussion online, especially about how raw and unfiltered Gaethje was in that moment.